Hello everybody, and welcome to this video. I am Fidemaster Inquiry Johannesson from Iceland. We're going to look at another game by AlphaZero, the amazing AI from Google's DeepMind. This time around, AlphaZero had the black pieces, finally. AlphaZero only won 3 games with the black pieces out of the 50, but it didn't lose a single game. It will be interesting to see the openings with black, but on the other hand, this will not be as flashy as some of the games we've seen with white, but I think it's very instructive nonetheless. So let's dive into it. Stockfish with the white pieces and AlphaZero with the black pieces. And we open with e4. And AlphaZero chooses to go play the Berlin with knight f6. Just like the old masters and the modern masters, because this is the most popular opening at the top levels, and so popular that people have almost stopped playing the Ruy Lopez and are now playing the Italian game with the bishop on c4. But if you don't want to go into the Berlin, you play d3, which is the anti-Berlin. But we'll leave the opening discussion for another time. Bishop c5. Bishop takes on c6. D takes c6. It's more important here to open up for the bishop than to capture towards the center. Castles, knight d7, protecting the e5 pawn. c3. This has all been played before, for instance in Elyanov against Ratchapov 2017. Black castles, d4. Black puts the bishop on d6. We want to protect this pawn here. Bishop g5, queen is attacked, so it moves. Rook e1, and now f6. Stockfish elects to put the bishop on h4. And we're even still following a grandmaster game here. Saba Balogh from Hungary has white against the Palligras, but black played knight b6 in that game. AlphaZero, however, goes with queen to f7. Knight b to d2 from white, and a5 for black. Trying to gain some space on the queen side. This turns out to be quite useful in the game, as we'll see later. Bishop g3, and now rook e8. Now white wasn't really threatening to take on e5 because we got 1, 2, 3 attackers, and we already had 3 defenders, so we were doing quite okay. But black adds a 4th defender, and this is kind of a little bit of what's called overprotection, and that's a concept that's attributed to Nimzovitsch. So we can say here that AlphaZero is channeling its inner Nimzovitsch here at this point, without knowing who Nimzovitsch is, which is very impressive. And we'll see him or it channel its inner Nimzovitsch later in the game. So queen c2, knight to f8. Eventually we have to find something for this bishop to do, whether it be here or here, but for now, maybe not so important. c4, c5. Of course, white was threatening to play c5 himself, when the bishop would have to go to a passive square, and then e5 is undermined, and white can start to win some material. So black had to play the ugly c5, and now after d5, we can say that black has quite an ugly bishop. Somewhat of a pawn, because it can't really move anywhere. But we've seen before that AlphaZero understands pieces, and this bishop is not completely dead, because it can come alive later through a maneuver like this, g6, and then something like this, or bishop g7 to help prepare a break like f5. For the time being, we see b6, and we talked about Capablanca's rule before: put the pawns on the opposite color of your bishop, and that's exactly what AlphaZero is doing. And this, of course, enables the bishop to move quite freely if it so pleases. Knight to h4. g6. This goes well with the plan of rerouting the bishop eventually, and also protects the f5 square that the knight might have thought about entering. So the knight goes back, then doesn't really have any function anymore on h4. Bishop d7. Black is connected to the rooks. White puts his rooks in the center. Queen g7. Just small moves, improvement. And now doubling the rooks. We can say this is again channeling the inner Nimzovitsch, huge overprotection here with bishop, pawn, 2 rooks and the queen, all kind of protecting e5. So for the time being, black is very solid. But as the game goes on, you start to realize that white doesn't really have any good pawn breaks. What are pawn breaks? You try to open up the position with your pawns. You can't really do that. To prepare a3 and b4, you need a ton of moves because black already has 3 guys protecting b4. And to play f4, well, you're kind of helping black because you already have forces on the e file. You would perhaps open up the e5 square, and also if you're opening up the position, black has the bishop pair, so you have to be careful. Nonetheless, white played a3 here, a move which is I'm not all too sure about. h6, I think at some point black should play here, which AlphaZero eventually did, but before that it channeled its inner Russian. It's well known that in the past, and probably still today, that Russian grandmasters like to, even when they were better, they like to repeat the position 1 or 2 times just to show you who's boss. So here AlphaZero is going rook f7, rook e7, maybe I want to draw, and then maybe I won't. So here AlphaZero plays a4. No draw for Stockfish. Make your move. Stockfish can't really find any constructive moves, plays king h1. So now rook f to e7. And again we see this dance here. It's kind of threatening the threefold repetition, but again AlphaZero denies, goes for the Russian twofold repetition, and then plays g5. Now through all this, white has, according to Stockfish, white has held a small advantage, like 0.2, 0.3 according to Stockfish evaluation, but now it says 0.00. But I think we've established that AlphaZero is the new 0, and as we'll see, I think it's only black here that can improve its position. Because of mostly the pawn breaks we talked about, it's literally only black that can think about doing anything with their pawns. So let's see what happened. Knight g6. Now mind you, this is quite a long game, so try to go through this as reasonably quickly as you can. Rook f7. Now note, black just played knight g6, and notice the route this knight is going. For the time being, we can think about maybe going to f4 at some point, but there are other ideas here. Knight e7, where is the knight going? Queen d3, h5. Black is using its flexible pawns here to increase the space on the king side. h4 and g4. Actually, not g4 yet. First, knight c8. And at first glance, this looks like an odd move. Okay, maybe opening up for the rooks, but we'll see the point of this move. Rook e2, and now g4. Knight d2. Queen h7. Switching the forces, like black is preparing perhaps to play f5 at some point. Maybe knight back to e7 and f5. But there are other ideas, as we'll see. King g1. White can't really find anything constructive, so when computers can't do that, they tend to move rather randomly, like king h1, king g1. But AlphaZero is slowly but surely improving the position. And now bishop f8. That was one of the ideas of queen h7, to open up this diagonal for the bishop. And bringing the bishop back to f8 does another thing, a very important thing actually. After white's move, knight b1, we have knight d6. And this is what Nimzovitsch taught us, the blockade. The knight is the best blockader of advanced pawns or even passed pawns, because the knight can function behind the pawn. When we had the bishop here, we kind of talk about it was a bad bishop, it didn't have any scope, it was blocked by its own pawns here, couldn't really go anywhere. But the knight, however, the knight can jump, so from the defensive position we can also attack pawns. And that's like a dual function, and very important. And you will find this idea in many games, and something you must master, the blockading knight. So, moving on from Nimzovitsch, knight c3. I really like black's play here, bishop h6. It's so logical, just, you know, improving the position. Now the bishop gets more scope. Remember this bishop a while ago? It was on d6. We talked about that bishop, but now it's fine. Serves a function. Rook f1. So for the time being, it looks like black should be perhaps trying to advance f5 at some point. But now we see this rook a8 move, and it's a little bit cryptic, but probably in some lines AlphaZero wants to have the a pawn protected if it needs to move the bishop somewhere. So let's see, king h2, waiting for AlphaZero to do something. And now king f8. AlphaZero decides that the king is more safe here on e7 than on g8, because most likely AlphaZero will try to open up the position on the king side. And also when you bring the king to e7, king g1 was played, queen g6. When you bring it here to e7, you're also opening up for the rook to swing over to the g file if things open up there. So let's see, finally Stockfish decides to do something. It doesn't just want to sit and wait, so it plays f4. This was captured by AlphaZero. And now the exchange on e3, bishop takes e3. King e7 was played. And wouldn't you know it, once again, Stockfish is caught with kind of a bad bishop. Let's see some further moves. Bishop e1, queen h7, rook g3, rook g7, exchanging one pair of rooks, followed by rook g8. Stockfish is fine with exchanging pieces, and AlphaZero actually doesn't mind it, because this is further increasing the weakness on e4 and c4, aided by the fantastic blockading knight. And why did we talk about the bishops? This bishop here, once again, it's blocked by the opposition pawns. It can't really. Okay, look at the pawns that it might attack. So once again, let's change colors. Let's go for yellow. So these pawns are like something that the bishop can attack, but how are you going to reach it? You can't. You have to go like out of the board and come around the back, but that's completely illegal, so you can't really attack this. Meanwhile, let's see another move, knight d2. Black might have thought about queen c1 check otherwise. But now let's look at black's bishop. It can easily select a diagonal to attack a weak pawn. It can go to a6, you can go to g6. And it seems like these pawns will be very difficult to protect. And I might go as far as to say that this is just strategically winning for black. But still, the play is very clear and instructive. King d7. Waiting move, let's keep going. b3. Not really necessary. But white has to do something. But now see all these weak pawns. This is attacked by the knight. This could be potentially attacked. It's theoretically weak, but maybe hard to attack. But the main targets are e4 and c4. queen g6, attacking this, so the knight must go back and become passive. And now bishop d1, fantastic move. Just waiting for white to do something. It's actually hard for white to do anything. Turns out that knight f3 is attacking the bishop, but now the bishop switches diagonals, kind of, goes to a4. So now once again this is attacked, so the knight must come back to d2. King e7. We see these king switches, which are not really important. Bishop f2, but now queen g4, which is important. And now you see why you wanted to swing the bishop from g4 to a4. You gave the queen this nice square here on g4 to threaten with penetration into the white position. Queen f3, but now bishop d1. And things start to take on a forcing matter here. Black is actually completely strategically winning here. 3 pawns that are just waiting to be captured. And actually, AlphaZero started with knight b7 just to blockade here on a5, not to weaken its structure, because you can take the pawns on e4 and c4 when you want. So after knight a5 and knight takes c4, I mean you can protect, but it doesn't matter because you just bring another attacker and this guy is dropping off. So Stockfish just gave up the pawn. And this is now more or less strategically lost. Black is up a pawn and can win another pawn. Really more or less at its leisure, you know. So let's just go quickly here. AlphaZero even goes for the opposite colored bishops. It doesn't really matter. AlphaZero is now going to be up 2 pawns. It's up 1 pawn at the moment, but through some nice maneuvering, it simply walks over here and picks up the h4 pawn, while the bishop is covering the passer. So, long story short, this is a winning endgame for black. Takes the pawn, and this outside pass pawn is very difficult for white to deal with. And this bishop protects the pawn and blockades this pawn. So now the king came back and we didn't have any further moves. So I have something like bishop a3. I think we can play bishop c6. You have to protect the pawn or play g3, but we just start to enter with the king here. And it's game over. So another nice game by AlphaZero, a bit more strategical, and I hope I managed to explain it to a different types of viewers. But as always, you're welcome to leave comments and feedback, and I'll be glad if you do. But for now, I'm signing out. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.